The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for the emergency session. Ambassador of the Empire tapped his six-clawed fingers against the polished metal table, creating a rhythmic clicking that echoed through the vast dome. His reptilian eyes scanned the room, noting the absence of one particular delegation. "Where are the humans?" asked Chancellor Hun, her crystalline form shimmering with anxiety. The Crystalline Confederation had always been punctual, and she expected the same from others. "Perhaps they are afraid," sneered General Or from across the room. The massive warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his rock-like skin from countless battles. "Their little colony ships have been under attack for weeks. Maybe they finally realize they don't belong in our galaxy." The other delegates murmured among themselves. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, after their slow expansion into space had finally brought them into contact with the greater galactic community. They were considered a minor species, noteworthy only for their unusual persistence and their strange habit of naming their ships after ancient mythological figures. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The central hologram activated, revealing Captain Sarah of the human vessel Ares. Her uniform was crisp despite the obvious battle damage visible on her ship's bridge behind her. "Apologies for our delay, Council members," Sarah said calmly. "We've been dealing with some complications." "Complications?" General Or laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Your entire frontier fleet has been destroyed by the Devourers. Your colonies are burning. Call it what it is, human. You're losing a war you never should have started." Sarah's expression didn't change. "We haven't lost anything yet, General, and we didn't start this war. The Devourers did when they consumed the Altair system." The mention of Altair sent a chill through the chamber. 3 months ago, the Devourer swarm had emerged from the galactic rim, consuming entire star systems. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, creatures that stripped worlds bare and converted the matter into more of themselves. Every species that had tried to stop them had been annihilated. "The point remains," Ambassador interrupted, "that humanity lacks the military capacity to contribute meaningfully to our defense efforts. Perhaps it would be better if your species evacuated to the inner systems while the rest of us handle this threat." "That's not going to happen," Sarah replied firmly. "Earth and her colonies will stand and fight." "With what?" demanded Chancellor Hun. "Your largest warships barely register as patrol craft by our standards. Your weapons technology is centuries behind ours. Your entire military consists of maybe 10,000 vessels scattered across 50 systems." "We appreciate the Council's concern," Sarah said, "but we've been handling the Devourer incursions in our space just fine." This statement caused an uproar. General Or slammed his massive fist on the table, cracking the metal surface. "Impossible! The Devourers consumed a battle fleet of 500 ships last week. The Crystalline Confederation lost an entire sector yesterday. You cannot possibly be holding them off with your primitive technology." Sarah's smile was slight but unmistakable. "Perhaps our technology isn't as primitive as you think." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red as Admiral of the Aquatic Federation burst through the chamber doors, water still dripping from his environmental suit. "They're here," he gasped. "A Devourer fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. Massive one, at least 3,000 bioships. They're heading straight for the station." Panic erupted among the delegates. The Council station was supposed to be heavily defended, protected by the combined fleets of the major powers. But those fleets had been spread thin across the galaxy, desperately trying to contain the Devourer advance. "How long until they reach us?" Ambassador demanded, his composure finally cracking. 15 minutes, maybe less," Admiral replied. "They're moving faster than anything we've ever recorded." Through the chamber's transparent dome, they could see ships beginning to move, diplomatic vessels fleeing in panic, defense platforms powering up their weapons. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Devourers had torn through much stronger defenses. "Captain," Chancellor Hun said urgently, "your ship should evacuate immediately. There's no point in throwing away lives needlessly." Sarah looked at something off-screen, then back at the camera. "Actually, I think we'll stick around. It's about time we showed you what humans are really capable of." "This is not the time for heroic gestures," General Or roared. "Your single ship cannot possibly." He stopped mid-sentence as the tactical display updated. Where Sarah's lone vessel had been moments before, there were now dozens of ships, then hundreds, then thousands. "What is this?" Ambassador whispered. The ships materializing around the station were unlike anything in the galactic database. They were sleek, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Energy readings were off the charts, and their weapon signatures were completely unknown. "Allow me to introduce you to the real human defense force," Sarah said calmly. "What you've been seeing for the past 50 years were our exploration and colonization vessels. We thought it best to keep our military capabilities private until we were certain we could trust our new neighbors." Admiral's tactical readouts were going haywire. "Impossible! These energy signatures. They're reading higher than anything in our databases. Captain, how many ships do you have out there?" "This is just the first fleet," Sarah replied casually. "About 12,000 vessels. We have 9 more fleets in reserve." The silence in the chamber was deafening. 120,000 warships. It was more than the combined fleets of the 5 major powers. But how?" stuttered Chancellor Hun. "Our intelligence indicated you had barely developed faster-than-light travel. Your industrial capacity shouldn't be able to support such a fleet." Sarah's smile widened slightly. "You've been observing our civilian infrastructure. What you missed is that human military doctrine has always emphasized redundancy and concealment. We've been building ships in hidden facilities throughout human space for centuries. Underground shipyards, asteroid facilities, mobile construction platforms, and our faster-than-light technology. Well, let's just say we've been holding back." As if to demonstrate, the human fleet suddenly shifted formation with impossible speed. Ships that had been scattered across space regrouped into perfect attack formations in mere seconds, their movement faster than any known drive system should have allowed. "By the void," General or breathed. "Your ships, they're not using conventional hyperdrives." "No, they're not," Sarah confirmed. "We discovered something we call fold space technology about 300 years ago. Instead of traveling through hyperspace, we fold space itself. Instantaneous movement across any distance. We've been very careful to only use conventional drives where other species might observe us." The Devourer fleet was now visible on long-range sensors, a writhing mass of organic ships that pulsed with malevolent energy. They moved like a living thing, flowing through space with predatory grace. Each bioship was the size of a city, covered in weapon ports and launching bays that disgorged smaller attack craft like antibodies responding to an infection. "Incoming transmission from the Devourers," announced the station's communication officer, his voice shaking. The main screen flickered, revealing something that description. It might once have been organic, but now it was a fusion of flesh and metal, circuits and organs, technology and biology merged into something that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, its voice was a harmony of screams. "Resistance is feudal council species. Your technology is inferior. Your strategies are predictable. You will be consumed, your matter repurposed, your worlds added to our biomass. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." General Or rose to his feet, his warrior pride overcoming his fear. "We will never surrender to abominations like you. The free species of this galaxy will fight to the last ship." The thing that might have been the Devourer commander tilted its head with unnatural angles. "You speak of free species, yet one among you conceals their true nature. Humans, we have encountered your kind before, in distant galaxies, long ago. You are not what you pretend to be." Every eye in the chamber turned to Captain, whose expression had gone completely neutral. "Is that so?" she said quietly. "Oh yes," the Devourer hissed. "We know what you are. The universe trembles when humans go to war. Entire galaxies have fallen to your species when roused to true anger. You are the apex predators of all creation, and you hide among these lesser beings like wolves among sheep." The alien delegates were staring at Sarah in shock and growing fear. Chancellor Hun's crystalline form was pulsing with rapid color changes, a sign of extreme distress. "Captain, is this true?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her eyes never leaving the Devourer on the screen. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before, as if a mask had been removed. "We hoped it wouldn't come to this," she said. "For 50 years we've tried to be good neighbors, peaceful, diplomatic. We've contributed to scientific research, participated in cultural exchanges, helped with humanitarian missions. We wanted to prove that humanity had evolved beyond our ancestral nature. What ancestral nature? Ambassador demanded. Sarah looked directly at him, and for the first time he saw something ancient and terrifying in her eyes. We are a species that evolved from persistence predators. Do you know what that means? It means our ancestors didn't chase prey until they caught it. They chased it until it collapsed from exhaustion. We are literally evolved to never give up, never stop hunting, never show mercy to anything we identify as a threat. She paused, letting that sink in. Every human carries the genetic memory of 10,000 years of warfare. We are the only species we know of that has independently developed the concept of total war, complete destruction of an enemy's ability to resist. We've fought ourselves for, and every generation has been stronger, smarter, more deadly than the last. The devourer on the screen was watching with what might have been anticipation. Tell them the rest, human. Tell them why we know to fear your kind. Sarah's expression hardened. 3,000 years ago, before we achieved faster-than-light travel, we detected radio signals from another star system. First evidence of alien life. We were excited, hopeful. We spent decades trying to establish communication. The chamber was absolutely silent. We finally succeeded in making contact just as our first interstellar probe reached their system. What we found was a dead world. The civilization that had sent those signals had been destroyed centuries earlier by a species very much like the Devourers. Consumed, converted, turned into biomass for their fleet. Sarah stood up, and somehow she seemed to fill the entire screen despite being just one human on a ship bridge. That was humanity's first lesson about the universe, that there are things out there that destroy civilizations for fun, that peace and diplomacy and hope mean nothing to creatures that see other sapient beings as nothing more than raw materials. "What did you do?" Chancellor Hun whispered. "What humans always do when we learn that something wants to hunt us," Sarah said simply. "We became better hunters. We spent the next 1,000 years preparing for war against an enemy we'd never met but knew we'd face eventually. We built weapons that could crack planets, ships that could fold space, strategies that could encompass entire galactic arms." The Devourer commander was making a sound that might have been laughter. "And then they found us. Oh, how they found us. Across 3 galaxies we have spread our swarms, consuming all life. But always, always the humans follow, relentless, implacable. The only species we have ever encountered that fights harder when losing, that becomes more dangerous when cornered." "You're talking about other humans," General Orr said slowly. "Not these humans. Earth is a single world." "Earth is one of 47 human," Sarah interrupted. "Humanity didn't evolve once, General. We've evolved 47 times across the galaxy on 47 different worlds. Sometimes we call ourselves human. Sometimes we have other names. But we're all the same species, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures. And we've all been hunting the Devourers for 3. The tactical display updated again. The 12,000 ships of First Fleet were joined by more vessels appearing from nowhere. Then more. Then more. "How many?" Ambassador asked faintly. "Currently mobilizing, about 2 million vessels from 17 human worlds. The rest of our colonies are moving to defensive positions in case this is a feint." Sarah's voice was completely matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing shipping schedules. 2 million warships. It was an impossible number. The combined military forces of the entire Galactic Council numbered less than 50,000 vessels. "This can't be real," Chancellor Hun said desperately. "No species could hide this level of military capacity." "You never asked the right questions," Sarah pointed out. "You observed our colonies and assumed they were our only settlements. You are exploration ships and assumed they were our fleet. You saw what we wanted you to see because we were hopping. We'd never need to show you what we really are." On the tactical display, the Devourer fleet had stopped its advance. For the first time since their emergence from the galactic rim, the bioships seemed hesitant. "Even you monsters learn eventually," Sarah said, addressing the Devourer commander. "How many galaxies have we chased you through now? How many of your fleets have we destroyed? How many worlds have we liberated from your biomass conversion facilities?" The creature's response was a shriek of rage that overloaded the communication systems temporarily. When the signal cleared, its voice was different, higher, more desperate. "You cannot destroy us. We are infinite. We are eternal. We have consumed civilizations beyond counting." "And we've been counting every single one," Sarah replied coldly. "We have files on every species you've murdered, every world you've stripped bare, Every crime you've committed across 3 galaxies and 15 million years of existence. Humanity remembers all of it. She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Did you really think we'd let you do it again? Did you honestly believe that we'd watch you consume our new friends and do nothing? The silence stretched out for nearly a minute. Finally, General Orr found his voice. Friends, you consider us friends. Sarah looked genuinely surprised by the question. Of course we do. Why do you think we've been so careful to hide our true nature? We've spent 50 years learning about your cultures, your histories, your hopes and dreams, though with their poetry and their philosophy. The Crystalline Confederation's mathematical theorems that make reality more beautiful, the concepts of honor and strength, the Federation's depotion meditations. Her expression softened slightly. For the first time in our history, we found species we wanted to protect rather than hunt. We found neighbors we could respect. We found peace, real peace, not just the absence of war. But now the Devourers are here, Chancellor Hun said, beginning to understand. Now the Devourers are here, Sarah confirmed, and her voice went cold again. And they've made the mistake of threatening our friends. The human fleet was moving now, flowing through space like a living thing. The ships moved with perfect coordination, their formation shifting and adapting in real time. Weapon systems were powering up, creating energy signatures that made the Council's sensors scream warnings. You have one chance, Sarah said to the Devourer commander. Leave this galaxy immediately. Return to whatever void spawned you. Never come back. We won't pursue you this time if you go now. The creature on the screen seemed to swell with rage. We will not flee from apes who learn to use tools. We are the masters of. The transmission cut off as Sarah closed the channel. She turned back to address the Council. We tried, she said simply. When the shooting starts, your fleets should pull back to minimum safe distance. Human warfare tends to get energetic. Captain, Ambassador said urgently, our combined fleets are already in position. The Empire stands ready to fight alongside humanity. As do the Crystals, declared Chancellor Hun. The warrior clans will not be left out of such a battle, General Orr announced. Admiral was nodding vigorously. The Federation pledges all our vessels. Sarah looked genuinely moved. That's not necessary. We can handle the Devourers ourselves. We've been doing it for centuries. Maybe, General Orr said, standing to his full imposing height. But you said we were friends, and friends fight together. A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. In that case, Admiral, you heard them. Integrate the Council fleets into our battle plan. Command Authorization Omega-77. Acknowledged, Captain, came a new voice. Council vessels, please transmit your tactical specifications to our fleet coordinators. We'll find roles for everyone. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The Council fleets, which had seemed so impressive just hours before, were smoothly integrated into the vast human formation. Communication protocols were established. Targeting solutions were shared. Battle plans were distributed. And through it all, more human ships kept arriving, not just from local space, but from across the galaxy. Each new group was larger than the last, their designs more exotic, their energy signatures more powerful. How long? Sarah asked off-screen. 47 minutes until the rest of First Fleet arrives. 2 hours until Second Fleet can get here. 8 hours for Third Fleet, came the reply. We won't need that long, Sarah said confidently. The Devourers have been running for so long, they've forgotten how to fight someone who can hit back. On the tactical display, the Devourer fleet was reforming. The bioships were arranging themselves into attack formations, their organic hulls pulsing with alien energies. Smaller attack craft were streaming out of launch bays by the thousands. 3,000 capital ships and maybe 50,000 attack craft, Admiral's voice reported. Standard Devourer assault configuration. They're moving to encircle us. Let them, Sarah said calmly. It'll make the targeting solutions easier. General Orr was studying the tactical display with professional interest. Captain, their formation is designed to maximize their bioweapons' effectiveness. Those energy drains they use can disable entire fleets. Yes, we know about those, Sarah replied. We've encountered them many times before. Human ships are resistant to bioweapon effects. As if responding to her words, the human fleet's energy signatures suddenly shifted. The vessels that had seemed almost organic in their movements now radiated something that felt distinctly artificial, clean, geometric, mathematical. Whatever bioweapons the Devourers possessed, they would find no purchase on the human vessels. Incoming, Admiral announced. The Devourer fleet opened fire. It was unlike anything the Council species had ever witnessed. Streams of living energy lanced out from the bioships, weapons that were part technology and part organism. The very space around the shots seemed to writhe and decay. Reality itself appeared to sicken where the bioweapons passed. The human fleet's response was immediate and overwhelming. Beams of pure light erupted from thousands of human vessels. Not the crude lasers that most species used, but weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. Where they struck Devourer bioships, the targets didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to energy in flashes of blinding radiance. "What are those weapons?" Chancellor Hun gasped. "Quantum disruptors," Sarah replied absently, watching the battle unfold. "We break the fundamental forces holding matter together. It's very effective against bioarmor." The Devourer attack craft swarmed toward the human fleet like a plague of insects, their numbers so vast they blotted out the stars. Each one was the size of a traditional fighter craft, but pulsed with the same organic energy as the larger bioships. The human response was swift and surgical. Point defense systems activated, but instead of traditional projectiles or energy beams, they fired something that looked like silver fire. The metal streams moved with impossible precision, each shot finding its target despite the chaos of the battlefield. "Programmable matter projectiles," Sarah explained as the Council delegates watched in awe. "Each bullet contains a quantum computer that can adapt to any defense system in real time. They never miss." In less than 3 minutes, 50,000 Devourer attack craft had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The bioships themselves were faring little better. Every time they tried to concentrate their fire on human vessels, the targets would simply disappear and reappear elsewhere, using their fold space technology to stay ahead of the bioweapons. "Incredible," Admiral breathed. "Your tactical mobility is absolute. How do you coordinate such complex movements?" "Quantum entanglement communication network," Sarah said. "Every human ship is connected to every other human ship instantaneously across any distance. We think and fight as a collective intelligence when necessary." The tide of battle was turning rapidly. The Devourers, who had swept through the galaxy consuming everything in their path, were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't touch. Their bioweapons were useless against human defenses. Their tactics were anticipated and countered before they could implement them, and their numerical superiority was meaningless against foes who could appear anywhere on the battlefield instantly. But the Devourers weren't done yet. The largest bioship at the center of their formation began to pulse with a different kind of energy. Its organic hull split open like a flower, revealing something massive and terrible within. "What is that?" General or demanded. Sarah's expression went grim. "Planet killer. They're going to try to destroy the Council station and everything around it rather than admit defeat." The thing emerging from the bioship was the size of a small moon, covered in what looked like cancerous growths that pulsed with malevolent energy. As it activated, space itself began to distort around it. The very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling. "All Council vessels, emergency retreat," Sarah ordered. "Get to minimum safe distance immediately." But even as the alien fleets began their desperate withdrawal, the human ships were moving forward. Not retreating, but advancing directly toward the planet killer. "Captain," Ambassador called urgently, "you must withdraw your forces. That weapon will destroy everything within a light-year radius." "Not everything," Sarah said quietly. "Admiral, prepare judgment protocol." "Acknowledged, Captain. All fleet elements standing by for judgment protocol authorization." "What's the judgment protocol?" Chancellor Hun asked nervously. Sarah looked directly at her. "It's what we use when we want to make absolutely sure something stays dead. You might want to shield your sensors for the next few minutes." The human fleet formation suddenly changed. Instead of thousands of individual vessels, they began linking together in complex geometric patterns. Energy beams connected ship to ship, creating a vast network of power that spanned the entire fleet. "Charging complete," Admiral reported. "Ready to execute judgment protocol on your command." The Devourer planet killer was reaching critical mass. Space around it was beginning to collapse as it prepared to unleash enough energy to sterilize several star systems. The bioweapon pulsed once, twice. "Execute," Sarah said calmly. The human fleet fired as one. It wasn't a weapon in any conventional sense. It was pure creation energy, the same force that lit stars and forged galaxies. A beam of white fire that turned space itself into a prism, fracturing reality into rainbow patterns that hurt to observe directly. When the light faded, the Devourer planet killer was gone. Not destroyed, gone, as if it had never existed. The space where it had been was completely empty, cleaner than vacuum, scrubbed down to the quantum level. "Incredible," General or whispered. "What was that?" "Starforge technology," Sarah replied. "We learned it from studying the remains of the civilization that first contacted us, the species the Devourers destroyed. We've spent 3,000 years perfecting it." The remaining Devourer bioships were already beginning their retreat, their formation breaking apart as they fled toward the galactic rim. But the human ships weren't pursuing. They simply watched as their ancient enemies disappeared into the darkness between galaxies. "Why aren't you following them?" Admiral asked. "Because this was just a probe," Sarah said tiredly. "The main Devourer force is still out there, waiting to see if this galaxy has any real defenses. Now they know." She turned to address the full council. "Which brings us to a very important conversation. Now that you know what humanity really is, what we're really capable of, what comes next?" The silence stretched out for nearly a minute as the alien delegates processed everything they had witnessed. Finally, General Orr spoke. "You could conquer us all, couldn't you? If you wanted to." Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, we could." "But you don't want to." "We really don't. We've spent the last 50 years learning to be something other than conquerors. We want to protect civilizations, not destroy them." Ambassador leaned forward. "And if we asked for your protection, if we formally requested that humanity serve as the galaxy's defense force?" Sarah considered this carefully. "We'd need to discuss terms. Humans have a saying, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. If we're going to protect this galaxy from the Devourers and anything else that might threaten it, we'll need resources, cooperation, and complete honesty between all our species." "No more secrets," Chancellor Hun said. "No more secrets," Sarah agreed. "And no more pretending to be something we're not. If we're going to be allies, real allies, you need to understand exactly what you're allying yourselves with." General Orr straightened to his full height and performed what humans had learned was a formal salute of respect. "I hereby request that humanity accept the formal protection contract of the warrior clans. We offer our strength in service of the greater alliance." One by one, the other delegates followed suit. The Empire, the Crystalline Confederation, the Aquatic Federation, every major power in the galaxy formally requesting humanity's protection. Sarah looked around the room at these beings who had become, against all odds, friends, people worth protecting, people worth fighting for. "Accepted," she said simply. "Welcome to the real war." 6 months had passed since the Battle of Council Station, and the galaxy would never be the same. What had once been scattered independent systems was now a unified defense network spanning 47 species and 12,000 star systems. At the heart of it all was humanity's revealed military might, but the real changes ran much deeper than anyone had expected. Admiral stood in the command center of Terra Prime Station, humanity's primary military headquarters. The massive structure orbited Earth's moon, hidden from casual observation by the same cloaking technology that had concealed human military assets for centuries. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see the construction yards where human and alien engineers worked side by side, building new classes of hybrid vessels that combined the best of all galactic technologies. "Admiral," her aide called out, "incoming priority transmission from the frontier. It's Admiral." Nodded, walking to the central communication platform. The hologram that materialized showed her counterpart, but he looked different than when they'd first met. The formal diplomatic robes had been replaced with practical military gear, and his reptilian features carried new scars from recent battles. Said without preamble, "We have a problem. Our long-range scouts have detected massive Devourer fleet movements in the Andromeda approach vector. They're not just coming back, they're bringing everything they have." Felt her stomach tighten. The past 6 months had been spent in frantic preparation for exactly this scenario, but part of her had hoped they'd have more time. How massive are we talking about? Preliminary estimates suggest 50 million bioships, possibly more. They've been gathering forces from across 3 galaxies. This isn't another probe, this is their final offensive. The command center around fell silent as every human officer processed this information. 50 million ships. Even with humanity's revealed capabilities and their new alliance with the Council species, they were looking at odds of nearly 10 to 1. Time to arrival? Asked, already running calculations in her head. 18 months, maybe less if they push their bio drives beyond safe parameters, which, knowing the Devourers, they probably will. Nodded grimly. Thank you for the warning, Admiral. We'll convene an emergency strategy session within the hour. Please gather representatives from all allied species. As the transmission ended, turned to her staff. You heard him, people. This is what we've been preparing for. Send word to all human worlds. Operation Aegis is now active. Full military mobilization, all reserves called to service. Captain, her chief of staff, stepped forward. Admiral, should we inform the civilian populations? 50 million Devourer ships. They'll know soon enough, replied. Right now, our priority is making sure we're ready to give them a fight they'll never forget. 3 hours later, representatives from every major species in the galaxy had gathered in Terra Prime's main conference room. But this wasn't the elegant council chamber where they'd first learned humanity's true nature. This was a military briefing room, designed for function rather than diplomacy. General Orr had arrived first, as had expected. The massive warrior had become one of humanity's strongest supporters in the past months, after seeing firsthand how humans conducted war. His own species had always valued strength and honor in battle, and he'd found both qualities in abundance among human military commanders. Chancellor Hun materialized next, her crystalline form glowing with mathematical equations that only her species could interpret. The Crystalline Confederation had become humanity's research partners, their advanced computational abilities proving invaluable in modeling complex battle scenarios. Admiral swam into the room in his mobile aquatic environment suit, followed by representatives from dozens of other species. Each one had committed their entire military to the common defense, trusting in humanity's promise of protection. Looked around the room at these beings who had become much more than allies over the past months. They'd become family. The thought of the Devourers consuming them, converting their rich cultures into biomass, filled her with a cold fury that she kept carefully controlled. Ladies and honored beings, she began formally, you've all heard Admiral's report. The Devourers are coming with everything they have. Our intelligence estimates suggest this will be the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Captain Sarah, now promoted to Admiral after her performance at Council Station, stepped forward to address the group. We've spent the last 6 months learning about each other's capabilities and integrating our technologies. It's time to put that knowledge to the test. She activated the central hologram, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated known Devourer approach vectors, while blue showed allied defensive positions. The good news is that we have advantages they don't expect, Sarah continued. The Devourers have fought humanity before, but never humanity working in true partnership with other species. Our combined technologies have produced capabilities that exceed the sum of our parts. General Orr leaned forward, his rock-like features intense with interest. What kind of capabilities? Sarah smiled and noticed it was the same expression she'd worn just before unleashing the judgment protocol. Admiral Hun, would you care to explain the breakthrough your mathematicians achieved? The crystalline being's form pulsed with excited colors. My people have been analyzing human fold space technology alongside our own dimensional equations. We've discovered a way to create what we call reality anchors fixed points in spacetime that cannot be folded, shifted, or manipulated by any known force. Admiral's head tilted in confusion. I don't understand the tactical implications. It means, said, that we can choose our battlefields. The Devourers rely on mobility and overwhelming numbers. If we can force them to fight where we want, when we want, we can neutralize those advantages. She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show a star system on the galaxy's outer rim. We call it the Thermopylae Line. 7 star systems arranged in a natural bottleneck formation. We've spent the last 6 months turning them into the most heavily fortified positions in galactic history. The display zoomed in, revealing details that made even the veteran military commanders gasp. Each star had been surrounded by orbital defense platforms using hybrid human-alien technology. Entire asteroid fields had been converted into automated weapon systems. The space between planets bristled with mines, barriers, and concealed weapon platforms. But the real surprise, Sarah added, is what we've built in the central system. The hologram focused on a single star around which orbited what appeared to be a solid metal sphere nearly the size of a planet. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and energy readings suggested power generation on the scale of stellar cores. "What is that thing?" General Orr asked, his voice filled with awe. "Call it the Forge," replied. "It's a collaborative project between human military engineers and representatives from every allied species. The Empire provided the poetry physics that lets us bend space-time. The Crystalline Confederation supplied the mathematical frameworks for large-scale matter manipulation. The clans contributed their metallurgical expertise for armor that can withstand anything. The Aquatic Federation shared their biotechnological knowledge for self-repairing systems." Admiral was studying the readings with growing amazement. "The energy output! It's reading higher than some stellar cores. What does it do?" Sarah's smile became positively predatory. "It manufactures ships. Entire fleets, actually. At full capacity, the Forge can produce 1,000 fully operational warships per day. We've been running it for 3 months." The silence in the room was profound as the assembled representatives processed this information. 1,000 ships per day for 3 months meant 90,000 additional vessels, Chancellor Hun calculated aloud, "combined with your existing fleets and our own forces. We now have approximately 300,000 ships ready for deployment," confirmed. "Still outnumbered, but not as badly as before." General Orr stood up, his massive frame radiating excitement. "This is how humans fight. You turn entire star systems into weapons." "When we have to," replied honestly. "But that's not even our main advantage. Our real strength is something the Devourers have never encountered before." She gestured again, and the hologram changed to show personnel records, millions of them, representing every species in the Alliance. "For the first time in human history, we're not fighting alone," she said simply. "Every species in this alliance brings unique capabilities that complement our own. Tactical poetry that can predict enemy movements through cultural analysis. Crystalline computational power that can process battle data faster than any individual mind. Warrior traditions that have developed honor-based tactics unknown to human military doctrine. Aquatic Federation biotechnology that's taught us to heal our ships even as they fight." Admiral was nodding slowly, a true symbiosis of capabilities. "More than that," Sarah added. "The Devourers are a collective intelligence, but they're a forced collective. They consume other species and add their biological distinctiveness to their own. They've never faced a willing collective, different species choosing to work together while maintaining their individual identities." Pulled up another display showing communication networks that span the galaxy. "Every ship in our fleet is connected not just to human quantum communication networks, but to the mathematical consciousness of the Crystalline Confederation, the poetic flow states of the Empire, the honor bonds of the clans, and the biorhythms of the Aquatic Federation. We think and fight as a true multi-species collective while remaining distinctly ourselves." The implications were staggering. Where the Devourers forced unity through consumption and conversion, the Alliance had achieved unity through cooperation and understanding. It was the difference between a cancer and a symphony. "There's something else," continued, her expression becoming more serious. "Over the past 6 months, we've learned things about the Devourers that change our understanding of this conflict." She activated a new display showing ancient star charts and archaeological data. "The Devourers aren't just random destroyers. They're following a pattern, consuming civilizations in a specific order based on their potential for technological development. They're not just predators. They're gardeners of a sort, culling species they judge too dangerous to be allowed to develop further." General Orr's eyes narrowed. What kind of species would they consider too dangerous? "Species like humanity," Sarah said bluntly. "And as it turns out, species like all of you. The Devourers have been watching this galaxy waiting for the right moment to cull civilizations that show too much promise. Chancellor Hun's form flickered with alarmed colors. Promise for what? Transcendence, replied. The kind of technological and social evolution that could eventually threaten the Devourers' dominance. They've been doing this across multiple galaxies for millions of years, waiting for civilizations to reach a certain level of development, then consuming them before they can become true competitors. Admiral was studying the data with growing understanding. That's why they attacked now, not because we were weak, but because we were becoming strong. The alliance itself was the trigger. Exactly. A multi-species cooperative civilization represents their worst nightmare, proof that different forms of intelligence can work together to become something greater than the sum of their parts. If we succeed, if we prove that cooperation is superior to consumption, other galaxies might follow our example. The room fell quiet as everyone processed this revelation. They weren't just fighting for their own survival, they were fighting for a principle that could reshape the entire universe. So what's the plan? General Orr asked, breaking the silence. Smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, it reached her eyes. We're going to give them exactly what they're afraid of. We're going to show them what happens when species evolve together instead of consuming each other. She activated a final display showing the complete battle plan. It was breathtaking in its scope and complexity, a coordinated defense that spanned multiple star systems and incorporated strategies from dozens of different species. The Devourers will approach along predictable vectors, trying to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. They'll expect us to fight like humans have always fought, through superior technology and tactics. They won't expect us to fight like a true collective. The plan unfolded layer by layer. Poetry ships that could inspire courage across entire fleets through cultural resonance. Crystalline mathematical vessels that could calculate probability cascades to predict enemy movements. Honor Guard squadrons that would never retreat and never break formation. Aquatic Federation bioships that could adapt and evolve their capabilities in real time during battle. And coordinating it all, human command ships that could process the input from all these different types of intelligence and turn them into unified action. It's beautiful, Chancellor Hun said softly, her form glowing with appreciation for the mathematical elegance of the plan. It's more than beautiful, Admiral added. It's evolution in action. This is how civilizations learn to become something new. Looked around the room at these beings who had started as strangers and become family. There's one more thing you all need to understand. This plan only works if we're completely honest with each other. No more hidden capabilities, no more secret weapons, no more private agendas. We fight as one or we die as many. General Orr stood and performed the salute of absolute commitment. The warrior clans pledge total transparency in all things military. Our strength is yours. One by one, the other representatives followed suit. The Empire would share their deepest cultural secrets. The Crystalline Confederation would open their most advanced mathematical models. The Aquatic Federation would reveal biotechnologies they'd never shown to outsiders. And humanity? Chancellor Hun asked. And Sarah exchanged a look. This was the moment they'd been dreading, the final revelation that would either cement the alliance or shatter it forever. There's one more human capability we haven't told you about, said carefully. Something we hoped we'd never need to use. The room fell silent with anticipation and dread. Every human world has what we call a Phoenix Protocol, Sarah explained. If a planet is about to be consumed by the Devourers, every human on that world can choose to merge their consciousness into the planetary defense network. They become the planet itself, a living world mind capable of coordinating defenses beyond anything organic or mechanical intelligence could achieve. The implications hit the alien representatives like a physical blow. Humans were willing to sacrifice their individual existence to become living planets in defense of their friends. How many humans would be willing to do this? Admiral asked quietly. All of us, replied simply. Every single human in the galaxy has volunteered for Phoenix Protocol if necessary. 47 worlds, 30 billion people, all willing to become living weapons to protect our friends. General Orr was staring at with something approaching religious awe. This is why the Devourers fear you, not because you're stronger or smarter, but because you're willing to become something they could never understand. The devourers consume other species to add to their collective, Sarah added. Humans would willingly sacrifice their individual existence to protect other species' right to remain individual. It's the opposite of everything they believe. Chancellor Hun's mathematical mind was working through the implications. If even a few human worlds activate Phoenix Protocol, the computational and defensive capabilities would be unprecedented. You could coordinate galaxy-wide defenses through living planet minds. Which is why it's our last resort, said firmly. Phoenix Protocol transforms humans into something that's no longer really human. Once a world activates it, those people can never be individuals again. They become a permanent part of their planet's consciousness. The weight of what humanity was offering, the complete sacrifice of their own species' individual existence if necessary, settled over the room like a benediction. We won't let it come to that, Admiral said with quiet determination. The Federation pledges every bioship, every technological innovation, every sacrifice necessary to ensure Phoenix Protocol remains unused. Similar pledges came from around the room as each species committed not just to victory, but to preserving humanity's right to remain human. Felt tears threatening and blinked them back. This was what they'd been fighting for all along, not just survival, but the right of every species to choose their own path of evolution. 18 months, she said, her voice steady despite her emotions. 18 months to prepare for the largest battle in galactic history. Let's make sure we're ready. As the representatives dispersed to begin their final preparations, remained behind with Sarah and a few senior human officers. The weight of what was coming pressed down on them like a physical force. Do you think they understand what they've signed up for? Captain asked quietly. They understand enough, Sarah replied. They know we're asking them to trust us with their civilization's survival. They know the odds are against us, and they're still willing to stand and fight. Nodded, looking out at the construction yards where human and alien workers labored side by side. The Devourers have been successful for millions of years because they've never faced anything like this. Separate species fighting together while remaining distinct. Cooperation without consumption. Evolution without domination. Think it'll be enough? Asked. It has to be, said simply. Because if we lose here, if we can't prove that cooperation is superior to consumption, then the Devourers will carry that lesson to every other galaxy in the universe. This isn't just about our survival, it's about the future of intelligence itself. Through the viewport, she could see the first of the new hybrid vessels launching from the construction yards. Ships that combined human engineering with alien innovations, crewed by mixed species teams that thought and fought as true collectives while maintaining their individual identities. In 18 months, they would learn whether love was stronger than hunger, whether cooperation could overcome consumption, whether the galaxy's greatest predators could evolve into its greatest protectors. The real war was about to begin. The Thermopylae line blazed with the light of 1,000 suns as the greatest battle in galactic history reached its crescendo. Admiral stood on the bridge of the human flagship Prometheus, watching tactical displays that showed the scope of destruction across 7 star systems. 18 months of preparation had come down to this, the final confrontation between the Alliance and the largest Devourer fleet ever assembled. "Status report," called out, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. "Outer defenses holding at 60%, reported Commander from the tactical station. "We've destroyed approximately 8 million Devourer bioships, but they keep coming. Current enemy count still reads 42 million vessels." Nodded grimly. They'd known the numbers would be overwhelming, but seeing them in reality was different from planning for them. The Devourers had indeed brought everything. Bioships from 3 entire galaxies, converted planetary masses serving as mobile weapons platforms, and organic constructs so massive they registered as small moons. "Admiral," came a transmission from Admiral aboard the command vessel Eternal Verse. "The poetry mathematics are holding. Our cultural resonance amplifiers have successfully predicted 17 major assault waves. The enemy is becoming frustrated with their inability to surprise us." "Good," replied. "Frustrated enemies make mistakes. How are our allied forces holding up?" General Orr's voice came through next from his position commanding the honor guard. "My warriors fight with the strength of 10. The Devourer bio-beasts have never faced opponents who grow stronger in battle rather than weaker. They do not understand how honor feeds the soul. Chancellor Hun's mathematical consciousness added her analysis. Crystalline computational models show the enemy's psychological profile deteriorating. They expected to face the same human tactics they've encountered in other galaxies: technological superiority and persistence hunting. They are unprepared for poetic warfare, honor-based tactics, bioadaptive strategies, and mathematical probability cascades working in harmony. Allowed herself a small smile. The Alliance's multi-species approach was working exactly as they'd hoped. Each alien military tradition was proving effective in ways the Devourers couldn't counter, precisely because they'd never encountered willing cooperation between species before. Admiral, status on the bioship adaptation protocols. The Aquatic Federation commander's reply carried notes of excitement despite the desperate circumstances. Beyond all expectations, Admiral, our biovessels are learning and evolving faster than we ever imagined possible. They're not just adapting to Devourer weapons. They're developing entirely new capabilities through interaction with human quantum technology and crystalline mathematics. As if to demonstrate, watched on her tactical display as a squadron of Federation bioships suddenly shifted configuration mid-battle. What had been sleek, fish-like vessels transformed into something that looked like living geometric equations, their hulls poolsing with mathematical patterns that seemed to bend space around them. "What just happened?" asked. "True symbiosis," Chancellor Hun replied with something approaching wonder in her voice. "The bioships have learned to think in mathematical concepts. They're becoming living computers that can reprogram reality through biological processes." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just military cooperation. It was evolution in real time, species learning from each other so rapidly that they were developing capabilities none of them had possessed individually. But the Devourers were learning too. Watched as their assault patterns began to shift, adapting to Alliance tactics with a horrible efficiency that had made them masters of 3 galaxies. "Incoming transmission from the Devourer command entity," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," ordered. The main screen flickered, revealing the same nightmarish fusion of flesh and technology they'd encountered at Council Station. But now it looked different, more desperate, more angry, and somehow more dangerous. "You have exceeded our calculations, Alliance species," the thing hissed. "We underestimated your capacity for cooperation, but you have also revealed the full extent of your capabilities. You have no hidden reserves, no secret weapons remaining. We do." Felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" The creature's response was a sound that might have been laughter if laughter could carry the weight of genocide. "Did you think we consumed only unintelligent matter, human? We have consumed species far older and more advanced than any in your pathetic alliance. We carry within us the accumulated knowledge and capability of 10 million civilizations." The tactical display suddenly erupted with new contacts. But these weren't Devourer bioships. They were something else entirely. Vessels that looked like they'd been designed by dozens of different species, technologies merged and twisted into forms that hurt to observe directly. "Ghost fleets," Sarah breathed from her station. "They're using the absorbed knowledge of every species they've ever consumed." The new ships moved with impossible coordination, each one employing tactics from different civilizations. Some used energy weapons that recognized from ancient human archives, technologies from species that had been consumed before Earth had even developed faster-than-light travel. Others employed strategies that seemed to come from machine intelligences, organic hive minds, crystalline mathematics similar to but far more advanced than the Confederation's techniques. "They're not just using absorbed technology," realized with growing horror. "They're using the tactical knowledge of every military genius from every species they've ever consumed. We're not just fighting the Devourers, we're fighting the ghosts of every civilization that ever tried to stop them." The ghost fleets hit the Alliance lines like a tsunami of accumulated warfare. Each ship seemed to know exactly how to counter their opponent's tactics, because they carried the memories of having fought similar enemies before. "Poetry mathematics ineffective against Ghost Fleet Sigma," Admiral reported, his voice tight with strain. "They're employing counter-poetry from species we don't even recognize. Our cultural resonance is being disrupted." "Honor tactics failing against Ghost Fleet Delta," General Orr added. "These enemies know our traditions better than we do. They're using our own concepts of honor against us." watched in horror as the carefully planned alliance strategy began to crumble. The Devourers weren't just adapting. They were employing the perfected military knowledge of millions of dead civilizations against enemies who were essentially using those same civilizations' descendants' techniques. They're using our own evolutionary path against us, she realized. Every tactic we develop, they've seen before from species that came before us. Admiral, Chancellor Hun's voice carried a note of panic that had never heard from the mathematical species before. The crystalline vessels are being systematically dismantled by enemies using our own computational methods, enhanced by technologies we've never seen. They know our mathematical frameworks better than we do. The alliance lines were buckling. Despite their numerical advantages in some sectors, despite their technological innovations, despite their perfect cooperation, they were being systematically outfought by opponents who had learned from watching the best military minds of 10 million civilizations die. All ships fall back to defensive formation Omega, ordered. Implement Protocol 7, maximum defensive postures only. As the Alliance fleet reorganized into their most defensible configuration, mind raced through options. They'd prepared for overwhelming numbers. They'd prepared for bioweapon attacks. They'd prepared for tactics they'd never seen before. But they hadn't prepared to fight the accumulated military genius of every species the Devourers had ever consumed. Admiral, came a quiet voice from behind her. Turned to see Dr. Sarah, the Alliance's chief. She'd been observing the battle from the research stations, analyzing Devourer behavior patterns. "What is it, Doctor?" "I think I understand what's happening," Doctor said urgently. "The Devourers aren't just using absorbed knowledge, they're using absorbed personalities. Those ghost ships aren't automated systems. They're crewed by the reconstructed consciousness of every military leader the Devourers have ever consumed." Felt her blood turn to ice. "You mean?" "Those are actual alien commanders from consumed civilizations, rebuilt from their absorbed biological patterns and forced to serve the Devourers. They're not just using dead civilizations' knowledge, they're using their actual people as slaves." The implications hit like a physical blow. They weren't just fighting for the survival of current civilizations. They were fighting to free the enslaved consciousness of every species that had ever fallen to the Devourers. "Can we communicate with them?" asked urgently. Doctor shook her head. "The Devourer biotechnology has them completely controlled. They're aware of what they're doing, but they can't stop themselves. They're being forced to use their expertise to destroy species like their own." Looked back at the tactical display with new understanding. Every ghost ship represented not just a military threat, but a tragedy, brilliant commanders forced to betray everything they'd once fought to protect. "There might be a way," Doctor continued hesitantly. "If we could overload their control systems somehow, disrupt the biotechnological bonds holding them." "What would that require?" "Something the Devourers have never encountered before. A type of consciousness they've never absorbed and can't understand." His eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Phoenix Protocol." Doctor nodded. A living planet mind would represent a form of consciousness completely outside Devourer experience, if we could establish contact with the enslaved commanders through a Phoenix consciousness. Closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 30 billion human lives in her decision. Phoenix Protocol had been their last resort, the final sacrifice they'd hoped never to make. But if it could free the enslaved consciousness of millions of consumed species. "Open a channel to all human worlds," she said quietly. "No," Sarah said urgently. "There has to be another way." "Look at the tactical display, Sarah," replied sadly. "We're losing. The ghost fleets are systematically dismantling everything we've built. In 6 hours, maybe less, the Devourers will break through our defenses and begin consuming our allies." She activated the galaxy-wide communication system that connected every human world. "This is Admiral to all human colonies. Phoenix Protocol is hereby authorized for any world willing to volunteer. We need living planet minds to communicate with the enslaved consciousness in the ghost fleets." The response was immediate and universal. Every single human world responded with the same message. Phoenix Protocol accepted, initiating transformation. Watched through long-range sensors as, one by one, human worlds began to change. Cities transformed into neural networks. Oceans became flowing thoughts. Atmospheres pulsed with consciousness as 30 billion individual humans willingly merged their minds into 47 living planets. The effect was immediate. Across the galaxy, a new type of consciousness emerged, planet minds that thought in ways no organic or artificial intelligence had ever imagined. They were still human, but they were something more as well. Something the Devourers had never consumed because no species had ever been willing to make such a sacrifice. "Contact established," came a voice that was somehow every human who had ever lived speaking in harmony. "We hear the screams of the enslaved. We feel their pain. We will free them." The Phoenix worlds reached out through space itself, their consciousness traveling along quantum pathways that bypassed all known communication methods. They touched the minds of the enslaved commanders in the ghost fleets, not with technology, but with pure will and compassion. "You are not alone," the Phoenix minds whispered to commanders who had been forced to betray their principles for millions of years. "We remember your sacrifices. We honor your peoples. Let us carry your burden." The effect on the ghost fleets was immediate and devastating, devastating to the Devourers. One by one, the enslaved commanders remembered who they had been, remembered what they had fought for, remembered the species they had died protecting. And they turned their weapons on their captors. The most advanced ships in the Devourer fleet suddenly began attacking their own forces. Weapons designed by civilizations the Devourers had consumed turned against the consumers themselves. Tactics perfected over millions of years of oppression became tools of liberation. "Impossible," the Devourer command entity shrieked. "They are ours, we absorbed them, we control them." "You never understood what you were absorbing," replied, her voice carrying the harmonized will of 47 planet minds behind it. "You thought consciousness was just biological information to be processed and stored. You never realized it was something that could choose to remain free even in bondage." The ghost fleets were now fighting with desperate fury, but not against the Alliance. They were fighting against the Devourers, seeking to destroy the entities that had enslaved them for eons. The most brilliant military minds from millions of species, armed with the most advanced weapons the Devourers possessed, turned loose against their captors. The tide of battle shifted in minutes. The Devourer bioships, designed to fight external enemies, were being systematically destroyed by their own most powerful assets. The ghost fleets knew every weakness, every vulnerability, every design flaw in Devourer technology because they'd been forced to serve it for. But knew it couldn't last. The Phoenix minds were already sending her warnings. The freed consciousness in the ghost fleets were dying as they fought. The biotechnological controls that had enslaved them were killing them rather than letting them remain free. "They're choosing death over re-enslavement," the Phoenix minds reported sadly. "Each freed commander is using their last moments to cause maximum damage to their captors. They are sacrificing themselves to ensure their people's final freedom." Watched as, one by one, the ghost fleets self-destructed after inflicting massive casualties on the Devourer forces. Each explosion carried the accumulated fury of entire civilizations, finally given the chance to strike back at their destroyers. When the last ghost ship detonated, taking a Devourer command cluster with it, the tactical display showed a completely transformed battlefield. The Devourer fleet, which had numbered 50 million vessels at the battle's start, was reduced to less than 5 million ships. More importantly, they'd lost their most advanced weapons and their most experienced commanders. "Now," said grimly, "we finish this." The Alliance fleet, reorganized and reinforced by construction platforms that had been building ships throughout the battle, launched their final offensive. But they weren't fighting alone. The Phoenix minds coordinated their assault with perfect efficiency, their planet-sized consciousness processing tactical data faster than any computer ever built. Poetry ships sang battle songs that resonated across entire star systems, inspiring courage in every Alliance vessel while spreading despair among the remaining Devourers. Crystalline mathematical vessels calculated probability cascades that made Alliance victory inevitable through pure logical necessity. Honor guards fought with the strength of warriors who knew they were protecting not just their own species, but the memory of every species that had ever fallen. And binding it all together were the human ships, crewed by beings who had just watched their entire species sacrifice individual existence to become something greater. They fought with the fury of children honoring their parents' sacrifice, and the determination of a species that had just proven love was stronger than hunger. The remaining Devourer forces, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat, but the Alliance wasn't letting them escape to threaten other galaxies. Phoenix Protocol Final Phase, commanded. The planet minds responded instantly. Across the galaxy, the 47 Phoenix worlds reached out through space itself, not with consciousness this time, but with pure creative force. The same Starforge technology that had powered their weapons was amplified through planetary-scale minds until it became something unprecedented. Reality rewrote itself around the fleeing Devourers. Space folded. Time twisted. The fundamental forces of the universe turned against entities that had spent millions of years consuming and corrupting them. When the cosmic storm cleared, the Devourer fleet was gone. Not destroyed, gone. Erased from existence so completely that they had never been. The only traces of their passage were the freed consciousness of the species they'd consumed, now at rest after eons of slavery. Looked around the bridge at her surviving crew, at the tactical displays showing Alliance victory across all fronts, at the long-range sensors that showed empty space where the greatest threat in galactic history had been moments before. "It's over," she said simply. But even as celebration erupted throughout the Alliance fleets, felt the weight of what had been sacrificed. 47 human worlds, 30 billion people, had given up individual existence to become something that could save the galaxy. They were still alive, still conscious, but they were no longer human in any recognizable sense. "Admiral," came the harmonized voice of the Phoenix Minds, somehow gentle despite its impossible scope. "Do not mourn for us. We chose this willingly. We are still human in the ways that matter. We still love, still protect, still hope for the future." Looked out at the stars, knowing that spread among them were 47 worlds where human consciousness had evolved into something transcendent. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," the Phoenix Minds replied, "we build something new. The Alliance has proven that cooperation is superior to consumption, that love is stronger than hunger, but the work is just beginning." Over the following months, as the galaxy celebrated its liberation and began rebuilding, the true scope of what had been achieved became clear. The Alliance hadn't just defeated the Devourers, they'd created a new model for how intelligent species could evolve together. The freed consciousness from the ghost fleets, given new bodies through Alliance biotechnology, brought knowledge from millions of destroyed civilizations. Species thought extinct for eons returned to life, their cultural heritage preserved in the memories of their greatest heroes. The Phoenix worlds became centers of learning and growth, their planetary minds serving as libraries for all galactic knowledge while exploring new forms of consciousness that transcended individual biological limitations. And humanity, the species that had started as hidden predators, had become something unprecedented, the guardians of galactic diversity, the protectors of species that chose cooperation over consumption. Now promoted to Supreme Alliance Commander, stood once again on Terra Prime Station. But now the view through the transparent aluminum showed not just human ships, but vessels from hundreds of species working together to explore the universe. "Do you regret it?" Admiral asked, joining her at the observation deck. "Your species gave up so much to save the rest of us." Consider the question seriously. Humanity as it had been was gone, transformed into something beyond recognition. But humanity as an ideal, the drive to protect others, to choose cooperation over domination, to sacrifice for strangers who had become friends, that had not only survived, but spread to every species in the galaxy. "No," she said finally. "This is what we were always meant to become, not conquerors or predators, but protectors. The universe's ultimate war gods, not because we were the strongest, but because we were willing to fight for something greater than ourselves." Through the viewport, she could see construction platforms building new types of vessels, ships designed not for war, but for exploration and discovery. Ships that would carry the Alliance's message of cooperation to other galaxies, other species that might be facing their own devourers. The war was over, but the real adventure was just beginning. And across 47 worlds, the Phoenix Minds smiled with 30 billion human souls, knowing that their sacrifice had given birth to something beautiful, a universe where strength was measured not by the ability to consume, but by the willingness to protect. Humanity had hidden their power for 50 years, revealed it when necessary, and finally transcended it entirely. They had become, quite literally, the universe's ultimate war gods, not through conquest, but through the ultimate victory of love over fear, cooperation over consumption, hope over despair. The galaxy would remember their sacrifice forever. And in the deep spaces between the stars, new threats would learn to fear not humanity's weapons or their tactics, but their absolute commitment to protecting those they had chosen to call family. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of friends willing to stand together against the darkness. And that made all the difference.